How you doing, guys? It's your boy Nando with Jermaine. This is the Pound for Pound Boxing Show in association of Dirty South and IQ Boxing. Today, we have a very special guest live from Miami, the Zone's very own Claudia Trejos. How you doing?
Doing very well, Nando. Thank you, Jermaine. Thank you for this invite. I am honored. It's such a pleasure to have this opportunity to chat up boxing and life in general with you guys.
Thank you. The honor is ours. Thank you.
Yeah,
We've
totally.
such a long time, and it's an honor to finally get to speak to you. What we want to know is where did the passion for boxing come from, and who were some of the first fighters you watched in your early days?
That is a very good question. I come from a very big family. I'm number 14 out of 17. So, and I have lots and lots of brothers. So, the older takes care of the younger. And my brothers were all, they had a penchant for fighting. And as a punishment, my dad would just send them out, just stay on the streets. Don't bring that type of attitude into the house, yada, yada, yada. And take your sister with you. And that's how it all started in reality. I did not know that I would fall in love with the sport until 1975. I think the world stood still for Thrilla Manila. And I fell in love with this beautiful, huge, bigger than life man, Muhammad Ali. And there was a part of me that was like, oh, he's awesome and I want to be like him, except women were not allowed in gyms. And least of all 5 or 6 years old, so it was not going to happen. By the time I was 8, I got my first speed bag. By the time I was 11, I broke my first nose, and then it just kind of got worse until I was 16, and then that was the beginning of the end.
How has boxing changed for females since then? Did you ever think it would be happening, right?
Nando, I gotta tell you, this past March 5th was one of those moments where I literally had to sit and absorb and just soak in the whole experience. Exactly what you said. When I fell in love with the sport, there was no way I would even think, first, women boxing, amateurs, Olympics, and as I'm speaking with you, I'm getting goosebumps. And then all of a sudden, we have one of the greatest women of all times making history, not just for women's boxing, but boxing across the board, and just bringing up the level to a whole different stratosphere. And it was brilliant for me to be able to, as a commentator, when I started 30 years ago in the business of sports broadcasting, I would have never... If somebody would have said, this is what you're going to be doing in 30 years, I would have laughed. There was no way. And remember, I come from the era of Layla Ali, Mia St. John, and that was not even close to what we see now in terms of quantity, quality, technique. Just fundamentals are there. The schooling is there. The amateur pedigree is there. So it was one of those moments where you go, you know what? If I die tomorrow, in terms of my journalistic career, I saw it happen, and I'm very blessed and fortunate in that sense.
Amazing. And do you think that this is the start of more all-female pay-per-views and events?
I am definitely looking forward to it. I would think so. I think the numbers reflect the attention and the hunger that exists. Because the truth of the matter is, besides soccer or football, the way I call it in Colombia, boxing would be the second most accessible sport across the board, from young girls from the ages of 7 and 8 all the way up to collegiate level. So if we can have that trickling in to amateurs, solid amateurs, and then make that transition just like any man, make that transition to professional, and be able to sustain a viable lifestyle with the sport of their love, of their hearts, of their dreams. Yes, this is what we're looking for. And I just want to take it to another level. I want to see people like us talking about fighters, period. Not just female fighters, man fighters, fighters. Because the risk is the same, be it a woman or a man.
100%.
100%. I would like to ask you a question. Obviously, on your free time, you're a motivational speaker and an author. I want to know
Yes.
what inspired you to write your book, Against the Ropes.
Oh, Jermaine, where do you want me to start?
Right from the
Uh,
beginning.
well, the truth is, we're living in very interesting times, pandemic, social unrest. We're now finally looking at inequality, both ethnically, racially, religiously. So, what better way to say, yes, it does exist, and yes, we keep fighting, and it's a good fight, and it's worthwhile. And my battle started when I was 5, and my brothers were just beating the crap out of me. But it reflected literally in my profession. I am very thankful to my male colleagues that at any given time they heard me, they understood where I was coming from, and they said, "Wow, she knows." And the funniest thing, the first couple of years is she's not bad for a girl, and now it's like, you got to listen to her. You got to listen to Claudia. But it's taken steps. It's taken, first and foremost, believe in me. I had to believe in me. I had to bet on me. And I think I am a common denominator. I think most of us struggle with accepting first ourselves and then selling ourselves to others. But it's so much easier when you are already sold on yourself. So I find that imposter complex is one of the biggest issues, because you are there. And for years, I'm telling you, I was there. I was part of huge covering in terms of main events, Olympics, and so on. And I was part of that broadcast team. And yet there was always that little thing behind me saying, yeah, are you really ready for this? How can you? Even February 5th, I had to have like 5 minutes worth of quiet time and just quiet that voice down. So reflecting on my path, reflecting on all the challenges that I had to put down it, like put pen to paper and, tell people this is happening. This is happening and it's real. It's okay. You will doubt yourself. You will have struggles. You will overcome obstacles. And even when you get to what you think is your ceiling, you're still doubting yourself. And the idea is take 2 steps back and appreciate where you come from and look at where you're going. That's what the book is all about.
Brilliant, brilliant.
They do say we are our biggest critic, and we are our big.
Yes.
If we can get over that hurdle, then it's a safe road ahead.
Yeah, it's very important to accept our virtues and our flaws. One time I had to recognize, I'm not perfect. I'm Colombian. I will forever speak English as a Hispanic. I can't get rid of it. It's who I am. Does it bother me? Yes. I have a hard time listening to myself sometimes. But this is who I am. And you know what? That makes me different from everybody else. That's what makes Claudia Claudia. But as long as I keep fighting that, I am uncomfortable with myself. Therefore, everybody around me will be uncomfortable. So as long as you start accepting you as a whole, and that, my friends, is the biggest challenge, and especially when we live in a window to the world, and the world is having a full eye of who you are, your comings, your goings, your mistakes, your wins. And it's so funny because naturally, humanity, for whatever reason, we tend to just look at the bad and we forget how much good we bring to the table. And in my motivational speaking, especially with minorities and women in general, in the corporate world, in high schools, my God, especially with social media, the scrutiny is exponential. It's what used to be, the high school bully or the class bully. Now the world has a window to you, and there is absolutely no filter. So we need to strengthen these young men and women. We need to strengthen their values, their self-worth. And what better way than to say, yo, I got you. I was there. I did it. And you know what? I'm still alive. And people used to rip me apart, and I'm still alive, and I'm still here, and I'm still viable, and I still bring value to the table.
100%. Would you say that one of the biggest factors of any athlete to open up and actually talk about it? Because especially as men, we have a sense of pride of not talking about any self-doubt, any depression that we have, not just athletes, just in general. And do you think it's time more to tackle that and say, hey, it's good, it's okay to talk about it, it's okay to open up about it? Because athletes these days have the biggest obstacle of social media, when athletes 20, 30 years ago will probably just read a newspaper and just be done with it, or see something on TV. Now you have Twitter, where everyone is criticizing you and just tweeting about you. And I think it's time to help people more regarding this, and to maybe train the younger generation to grow up and I don't know how to put it into words. It just prepare them for this.
I agree. You know what? I don't think we need to prepare them. I think we need to open the space for it, because especially coming from a post World War era where we were culturally, and I'm not even gonna separate by continents or culture. I'm just talking about in that rebuilding phase of humanity across the board, financially, socially speaking. There was no space for weakness. There was no space for, okay, I'm having a bad day, because what do you mean you're having a bad day? Look at me, I used to starve, and we had no toilet paper, and what are you talking about? What do you mean? You cry the day your mom dies. I remember hearing that on a regular basis. So I grew up with not crying. I never had a bad day. What do you mean I have a bad day? I am not allowed to have a bad day. You have a roof over your head, you have food on your plate. What are you complaining about? And I think today, the awareness that has brought different people, and I'm going to bring somebody that I like very much, and sometimes I don't like very much, but it makes him that much more special, Tyson Fury. Talk about a guy that rose like a palm and fell like a coconut. And then he survived that, and he went right back up. And he's now in the list of the best pound per pound. But it does not get any bigger than that guy. We're talking about in size, in personality, in power. And what better example than him that faced his boogeyman and said, yes, I'm an addict. Yes, I was depressed. Yes, I was in pain. And yes, I'm having a hard time. And I think that opened the door for, and I'm not even going to lay it down into the machismo world, but in general, that I am bigger than life. I can handle everything, and I cannot give myself space or time to even have pain. Just a bad day. Talk about Anthony Joshua. One of the things that I appreciated about him was once he lost against Andy Ruiz, he took time for himself. He went away. He spent time with the people that love him and respect him and support him, and he healed. Because, like you said, it wasn't just about a loss or his loss in perhaps one of the biggest scenarios ever in boxing at Madison Square Garden and in front of everybody in his American debut. I mean, hello. But he took it like a man. He said, I had a bad day at the office. Now I got to heal, and I'm just going to retreat to my cave, lick my wounds, and I'm going to be okay. And he disconnected for a little bit. I think Deontay Wilder is doing the same thing. I think he's having a hard time handling a loss. But who can really handle a loss well? A loss is a loss. That's why it's called a loss. Be it a person that you lose, a relationship, a friendship, or even just the first loss in your record. That's gotta hurt. And for some reason, to expect that any human being should just blow it over and, just get back on the horse, the typical, yeah, man up. Like, no, dude, I don't want to. Let me take some time off and let me take care of myself. And allow that environment. And I think society, I think, and I'm going to bring this up, and perhaps I'm going to get a lot of backlash on this. I think the best thing that happened to humanity was the pandemic. Because for a year now, we've had to live with ourselves and with the people that are closest to us, and acknowledge that, we're not okay. We got things, we got to look at that closet and bring all kinds of shit out. We got to clean it up. And as hard as it was, because it was very tough, I think it's the best thing that happened because it allowed us time. It pushed us into that you cannot be busy because we've always been so busy. We gotta work, we gotta travel, we gotta do this. And you know, we gotta. But guess what? For a year, we haven't gotta. There's nowhere to go.
Yeah.
100%. I agree. I mean, it's made me I appreciate my family anyway more, but it's made me appreciate the loved ones even more. So being with them every day. In that time period, I became a father for the first time as well.
Congratulations!
Thank you. So yeah, obviously I became a father, and then I grew closer to my partner when she gave birth. So, I mean, yeah, I just think in a way it has been a blessing as well as obviously a disadvantage has been a blessing as well.
Yes, and I'm glad. Congratulations. And what's the baby's name?
Zaria.
Congratulations.
Good. A question I would like to ask you is, obviously you touched upon you worked in the boxing Olympics. You also was the first Latin commentator to commentate on the NBA.
Yes.
And you worked for some massive broadcasters such as ESPN, Fox Sport, television, and etc. And I want to ask you, what has been your most memorable moment working for these broadcasters?
There's many, and you when you're doing what you love, you do it because of the emotions that just kind of like brew in your heart and in your soul. But just to remember one of many was to see LeBron James when he actually won the championship with the Cavaliers. And to see a grown man cry, a leader like that, because he literally took that team on his shoulder and cry because of what it meant. Not necessarily in terms of basketball, because today I don't think there's an argument as to who is the best basketball player today in terms of leadership and skills and what have you, and maturity. And but at that time, he had so many things to prove to himself, and he did it. I can also recall 1996 when I saw the man that made me fall in love with boxing, and whom I saw as this bigger than life, stronger than Superman entity. And then he looked so frail. Muhammad Ali, as he was getting up to light up the Olympic torch in Atlanta, it just reminded me of how the life can just go away, from one day to the next. And what you think is true, there's no such thing. It's just an illusion. What you think is a solid fact is just an illusion, because he had his own demons. He had his own issues because of the lack of social media. We didn't know it until it was very hard to hide the fact that he was fighting Parkinson's. But to see him so fragile was very touching, but so stoic at the same time. There was that strength in spirit, and I think those are the two. And I have many, but just because of who they were and what they meant to me, those two instances were life-changing, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, they're two iconic moments, very, very iconic moments. I love the LeBron James one. Obviously, I know how much it meant to the city of Cleveland as well to bring that championship back. And you obviously saw him breaking down. It just shows you how much it meant to him bringing that championship back to the city.
Yes, and to a city that has been punished with so much. I mean, financially, a city that was affected royally for decades, and then just bring a little bit of joy and just be able to do it for his hometown. Hands down, the best moment ever. I've never been able to do it, so I cherish that. I'm like, what can I do for my country or my city that would mean that much, minimum compared to what he did?
Yeah, it's an amazing feat. It really was an amazing feat.
Yes.
What's the greatest fight you've ever been to?
Oof. That's a long list, Nando. You just put me against the. I think one of the just because of the meaning and you know, Mexicans and boxing, they go hand in hand. And I saw Julio Cesar Chavez beat the best of the best, and then for him to be taken over by an Oscar De La Hoya, and then taken over a second time by a much bigger Oscar De La Hoya. The Tito Trinidad Bernard Hopkins, because of what it meant right after 9/11, and how B-Hop just schooled him. And I mean, the list goes on.
What's the one that sticks to you in your mind the most? Like, you think of boxing as like, wow, I was there.
Oof. Again, there's so many. I'm trying to think how far back. I think the Julio Cesar Chavez, Greg Haugen, 120,000 people yelling his name, that was pretty impressive. And the way he was gassed out completely after the first round because he just wanted to finish that fight. Because, and talk about imposter syndrome. He's like, and you know, we talked after the fact, and we're close friends. And he said, I had something to prove. I had 120, actually more than 120,000 people in a huge stadium. They're all yelling my name, and what if I lose? What if I can't do it? What if you know, everything comes tumbling down? I have this huge career behind me, and you never know. You could have a bad day at the office. You know, it's what's gonna happen. So he gassed out in the first round, and he says, you know, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I have nothing else to give. And sure enough, he did win, and in a very decisive way. But when you speak to him about the experience, and obviously, you know, I was on a chair watching the fight, and I was thinking, he's gonna take it. And you never know what's going on in that fighter's head. You really never know. And in my book, it was like, yeah, 120,000 people are here to support you. And in his mind, he was saying, fuck, I had 120,000 people that are like depending on me. What the fuck am I gonna do? So you know, those are the moments that you go, you never know what's going on in people's heads, and no better example than that. And I think that was special because Greg had been so insulting, so demeaning, and you know, the equivalent of B-Hop stepping on the Puerto Rican flag before his fight against Tito. That's how bad it was. That's how hated Greg Haugen was for that fight. So the energy at Azteca Stadium was mesmerizing. You could just feel how it was just boiling over. Good, thank goodness he won. Imagine if he didn't take that win. Oof.
It would have been disaster.
Yes.
I want to bring up the Claressa Shields fight again. In your opinion, now that she's made history, these rumors of her going to MMA, do you think it will happen, or are we going to see the much anticipated fight that the UK fans want, Claressa Shields versus Savannah Marshall?
I'm telling you right now, it is going to happen. So you guys can use that. It will happen. She will debut by summer of 2021 in MMA. She's already taken very important steps to have that happen. She's actually training with John Bone Jones, so it does not get any better than that. And yes, she called out Marshall. Let's not forget that 62 straight wins since she lost to Marshall. And she called her out immediately after she was done with DeCare. I think that's the one thorn in her career, and she wants to have it taken care of. Now we just need to, like she said, we need to look for the money. And now we go back to what we were talking about. I mean, this is a rivalry. This is something that has been brewing on for a few years now. And we should have the privilege of watching this happen. Two very accomplished fighters with very pertinent accolades and credentials. And this should not be passed up. This is one of those fights that need to happen regardless of what. There's also a possibility against Katie Taylor. Think about this. This is a woman that has gone from 168 to 160 to 154. I don't think, we had this talk about her going down to 147. She says, I'm in perfect condition, I can do it. Claressa's a big woman. And if she says, and that's another thing about Claressa, whatever she says, she does. So if she's willing to go to 147 and fight Katie Taylor, I see that happening too, and it would be a fantastic fight.
That's a stadium fight, 130,000, if anything.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Two sweethearts, outstanding women, both inside and outside the ring, with a lot of responsibility, not just in terms of boxing, but social. I think it's huge.
100%.
Experience there too.
Yes, a lot. And think about it, their pedigree alone, amateur level, the fundamentals, the mental and emotional maturity they've had in the last 10 years. It's outstanding. Outstanding. That would be, when we're looking at the evolution of women's boxing, I think they're both in the pinnacle of their careers. They're both representing a very important demographics, not just inside the ring, but outside the ring. Again, going back to all those young women that are looking to represent their countries, to go to their local gyms, to participate in the local tournaments. These are the women that they're looking for to become. They're looking at them as role models.
Yeah, I totally agree. I agree. I mean, that fight could be in the UK. It could even be in the States. It's that massive. For me,
Yes.
that's like Nando said, that's a stadium fight. For me, that's a main
Wembley.
event. Who knows if Eddie's listening? Who knows? I mean, I'm sure they can make it happen. I mean, that would be absolutely amazing if it could happen over here.
Okay, so if you guys have his ear, go ahead, tell him. Let's do it.
Yeah, Eddie, make it happen.
You go.
It's a fantastic fight for women's boxing and just for boxing in general. So if you can make that happen, that'd be amazing.
Yes, I agree. These are the steps. I mean, we cannot compare these to the Thrillers in Manilas or the Rumble in the Jungle, but we're still talking about these fights. And it's been 50 years, for God's sakes, and we're still talking about this. This would be the best of the best in their best moment. Yeah, I'm going to do it right. I'm going to say it right now. It's comparable to that. Yeah, period. Done.
I agree.
Of course, you can compare it because you've never had a female stadium fight before. And to get, let's say, for example, Wembley, 90,000 people to watch a main event of a female boxing fight. Who would have ever thought it? You can compare it to Manila and Thriller Manila and all the big fights. So it deserves it. And they deserve the money too.
Can I get that in writing?
They deserve the pay. Because I interviewed, I want your opinion on this. I interviewed Heather Hardy, and who I believe is a pioneer in women's boxing. You know, the pay-per-view fight in, what was it, 13 years? The first female 13 years. And she said, yeah, it's great that we're having, you know, all female pay-per-views and all this, but it's the pay. It's the pay. And she revealed, you know, she said, you know, I got offered to go fight 2 world titles and I got offered $20,000. What's that?
And she's lucky.
Yeah.
Yes, it's the difference is ginormous. But now I'm going to go back to the evolution of the sport itself and how, unfortunately, it's going to take time. I remember back in the day when the tennis was so different and the pay grades were just outrageously different until Billie Jean King came around and she said, you know what? Tennis needs to be, you know, step up. And it's been a few years since, but today, the Grand Slams, men and women, they get exactly the same pay in Grand Slams. And we're fortunate that we had those pioneers at that time. Now, boxing, because women's boxing has an earlier, younger, greener career, it's going to take that much longer. I am fortunate to live in this era because I have my daughter that sees no gender difference. Today's millennials and whatever comes after millennials that I don't know, those are just those weird kids that they don't even know how to write. They just text. God bless them. But they really don't see gender difference. We're now growing up, or these kids are growing up in an era where parents are allowing their kids to just evolve in whichever way they want. And I think that's fascinating. But with that comes those changes as well. The mentality will be different when we look at fighters, when we look at tennis players, when we look at golfers. This will change as society changes. But the uncomfortable time, the transitional time is right now. The Heather Hardys, I'm going to go back. I mean, Christy Martin, for God's sakes, she was a dominant force. Most people don't even know her. Most people have never heard of her. They heard of Layla because of, obviously, she's Muhammad Ali's daughter, and the similarity is uncanny. And then we talk about Mia St. John because she was beautiful and she represented two completely different segments of the U.S. demographics. But Christy Martin should be in that mix. Frazier's daughter should be in that mix, yet very few people talk about them. But they were the pioneers, and that was almost 30 years ago. Think about that. And the purses have not evolved since. So this is our painstaking process. That uncomfortable position, that uncomfortable situation of coming to the table and saying, I am not going to do this because you're not going to pay me. As a matter of fact, I was talking to one of the ladies that participated on March 5th, and my biggest qualm is, the 2-minute rounds. In boxing in general, we usually separate the round in 3 parts, the first minute, second minute, third minute. How do you develop the fight plan, And the truth is, 2 minutes is not enough. You're just barely getting warmed up, you're barely getting set up, you're barely getting into rhythm, and then all of a sudden the round is done. And this lady, very smart lady, she says, well, if they want 3 minutes, they better pay me. Because why am I going to subject myself to another minute worth of punishment? Or why am I going to subject somebody else to another minute of punishment when I'm not getting paid? So what's first, the chicken or the egg? Are we going to go to 3 rounds and allow those fight plans, the boxing style to evolve and develop in a round so we can have competitive fights and then pay them? Or pay them so they can have that opportunity to evolve their boxing skills, allow the fight plan to progress. What's first, the chicken or the egg?
Totally agree.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, wow, that's quite powerful to hear that. To hear her come out and say that, and she's correct. She's right. I mean, you do need to pay them exactly the same amount of money as you would for in the men's game. So, yeah, I think it's something they definitely need to look into. And I think not just women, but men need to help make change as well in along them lines as well.
I totally agree. There is no person more important than our male counterparts. In this case, we need the support of our male counterparts because, somebody said to me, well, if you did this or if you did that, and, I totally get you. If you were my daughter, my sister, my cousin, I'd be feeling for you. But guess what? I am somebody's cousin, sister. I am somebody's daughter. I am. So why aren't you supporting me? So again, it's since that first step has already been given to men, just because society has written like the rules and regulations of behavior like that. Somewhere down the line, they have to turn around and say, yes, she could be my sister, my daughter, my niece, my cousin. Then I should be able to support them. I want them to have the same opportunities. I want them to have the same chance. And equality is not about just a handout. Equality is about giving the same opportunity. An opportunity will open that door for talent to progress, for talent to evolve. And some will make it, some won't, because it happens everywhere. Men and women go through that. So the opportunity should be there. The door should be held open. Just allow the ladies to evolve into much better positions in order to sustain a viable lifestyle.
Yeah, 100%. I fully agree with you. A question I wanted to ask you is, obviously you was at the Berchelt Oscar Valdez fight.
Oh, see.
Fantastic
Fight of the year.
Yeah,
fight of the freaking year.
I fully agree. And for me, so far, the knockout of the year.
Totally.
I want to ask you, could you see that coming? Could you see
hell no.
Oscar Valdez winning by knockout?
I am going to admit, and I've admitted from day one, even before we walked into weigh-ins, Berchelt is just that much bigger, lankier. And that's why we call him El Alacrán. I mean, he's the scorpion for a reason. I mean, his boxing skills are not as depured and as refined as Oscar's. For the lack of, let's call it schooling, because Oscar comes from a very prestigious school of boxing, which is the Mexican school of boxing. You know, they go from the trunk up. The footwork is flawless. You know, his timing, his rhythm. But I was one that said, I can see this fight going the distance because we've seen what Oscar can do and what he can withstand and the kind of punishment he can take and absorb and just dish it back. There is no quit in this kid. But I thought there was no way, you know, basic math in boxing, and I know this is not a rule, but we usually talk about when you have two quality fighters, the bigger guy will take over. Well, until Andy Ruiz took Anthony Joshua, different ballgame. But that's the common premise. And based on that premise, I figured Berchelt will dominate because of his size and because he rehydrates to easy 147, 150. Easy. And I didn't think Oscar could be able to handle that punishment. I honestly thought his rhythm was going to go down. His punch production was going to go down. And I don't know if you guys realize after the third, fourth round, his punch production actually increased to, you know, levels that we saw Leo Santa Cruz and Johnny Gonzalez and Abner Mares material. I mean, that kid he's got like 5 lungs, and he just kept going at it. And he was setting that uppercut. And I could see it once in the fight. I could see the timing is there. He's just getting him. And sure enough, when that uppercut came in, it was more like a 45. I sat and I said, whoa, talk about punch power, talk about patience, talk about boxing IQ, his acumen. Just, you know, when all the elements come in, I mean, yes, his boxing skills, we already talked about it. But there's a difference between having the boxing skills and the patience to be able to implement whatever tool you have at the right time. That all came together. He never got frustrated. Because we know those first couple of rounds, the first and second, it was like, But then he just kind of slowly but surely just allowed his own timing, ring generalship to take over. His acumen took over. And with that came patience. And he just hunted him down, pouncing, and just struck at the right time in the right place. And it was magic. I just went over it, though. I'm sorry. It was beautiful.
I mean, it was a fantastic fight. I watched that. I woke up early hours in the morning to watch that from obviously in the UK. And what I liked about him, like you mentioned, I was going to mention the word patience because that's a very key word. Mm-hmm. He's very patient. His opponent was coming on to him, kept coming forward, and he had to not get frustrated and not engage too much. Just pick him off at the right time, and it was fantastic. It was an absolutely fantastic shot. And as soon as he landed, you knew straight away it was good night.
I don't think Miguel was ready for that. I don't think he ever saw that coming. I'm not going to say that he was not prepared because I know his work ethic. I know Miguel Berchelt very well. And I know how hungry he is. And I know there's no losing, there's no quitting in the back of his mind. We've seen him. I've seen him progress to world championship level. I just don't think any of us understood the type of work that Oscar put in. And I'm going to give credit to Eddie Reynoso. Because one of the things that I've seen with every single fighter that he handles, he doesn't change their styles. What he does is he works with what he has and then implements like just very small tweaks. I don't know if you guys realize Oscar's defense was that much better than 6-7 fights ago. And he didn't have a bad defense, but it's very slight movements. His head movement, there was no big bobbing and weaving that you would expect from somebody that size whose, center of gravity is that much lower. No, it was just very small. And the footwork, that half step, just to be able to go into Miguel Berchelt's guard, it was a beautiful sight. And we just continued to I'm sorry.
I'm gonna let Nando speak on that because obviously Nando called it before the fight. He actually told me that he thought Oscar Valdez would win by knockout. So
you did, Nando?
Yeah, he actually did predict it.
Did you bet on that?
I didn't bet on it, actually.
Shame!
No. I don't. Do you know what? I can't explain why. It was just a feeling. The same way I messaged Jermaine the day of Dillian White Povetkin, and I said Povetkin's going to win by knockout. Before that, I was saying Dillian. But I could put my hands up and say I didn't wake up for the fight, but I watched it when I woke up in the morning. I have never had a knockout make my mouth drop since Marquez Pacquiao.
Oof. But it was that level. It was of that level. And let me tell you, there were split seconds that I was really concerned about Miguel's well-being because he was not moving at all. And that drove me back to the Manny Pacquiao, Juan Manuel Marquez. And the difference was Juan Manuel was almost telegraphing what he was doing because he was looking for that punch. That uppercut was coming no matter what. And that was one of the worst outings for Juan Manuel. I mean, if we look at the scorecards until the knockdown, I had him losing. Hands down. But in this case, Oscar controlled that fight. I mean, the pendulum just kind of just swayed. And then I just thought, yeah, they're going to go the distance. And I could see this worst case scenario, it could be a draw. But I see Oscar going to take the win on points. But that knockout was just outstanding. But the work was there from round one. He measured him, he walked him, he moved him, he worked the angles, had him on the ropes. He did everything. It was the perfect fight. And I'm gonna bring, in terms of patience, one of the things that I called Anthony AJ against Andy Ruiz was when he got that first knockdown, he just got up so quickly and he was so frustrated because, again, mentally he was not prepared for that at all. And any fight plan that he did have at that moment, out the window. And he just opened himself up, and Andy, he had nothing to lose. So when you're in that position, you're just going to let things go, and you're just going to walk him down. And that's how Andy took that win. Hands down. Patience is key.
100%.
Somebody I wanna bring up to you is someone that you know very well is Sal Canelo Alvarez. Obviously, 2 weeks ago, the event against Yildirim in Miami.
Yes.
What an event, from the build-up to his entrance, dominant performance as well. What the question I want to ask you is, why is it since he has signed with Dazn and with Eddie Hearn, he has allowed more access to the build-up of the fight, his training, even the beautiful video of him singing to his daughter, more interviews with people, a more happier Canelo Alvarez, even a more happier Eddie Reynoso. So what has changed since then?
I think it's like everything. When you are not happy wherever you're working, let's go to a corporate setting. You're very good at what you do, but you don't like the people you're doing it for. So you're still going to be good at what you do, but you're not going to be happy. You're just going to be grumpy, and you're going to go to work, and you're going to drag your feet and what have you. I think that that relationship with Golden Boy deteriorated dramatically, I'd say since 2017, 18. And then the bomb just burst in 2020. I think like a lot of stuff, going back to the subject we were talking about, the pandemic, it exacerbated, like in everything.